His name is on the lips of everyone this year, 2008, as it marks the 50th anniversary of the book Things Fall Apart, one of the most used books in African literature. Often referred to as the father of African literature, Chinua Achebe wrote this book when he was only 28 years old. I'm Oyiza. You're watching Messengers, a show that brings you a medley of African arts and artists, so keep it right here. Driven by his father's weakness and lackadaisical attitude to life, Okonkwo determines to be the exact opposite. After beating the village strongman Amalinze the Cat in a wrestling match, Okonkwo becomes popular in his village and later becomes a wealthy farmer holding 2 chieftaincy titles. Though blessed with many children from his 3 wives, Okonkwo finds that he has a stronger affinity to his adopted son, Ikemefuna, even though he tries to hide it because he feels it is a sign of weakness for a man to show love for another. He watches Ikemefuna grow under his care and influences his son, Nwoye, positively until his death. Okonkwo is portrayed as one who has great respect for culture, such as settling disputes in the village square, sharing of kola nuts as a sign of welcome and friendship, and the various festivals that help build unity within the village. When he accidentally takes the life of one of his kinsmen, the law of the land applies and he is banished from the village. Your gods are false gods! After 7 years, Okonkwo returns to his village to find it is now subject to colonial law with the advent of the white man, and that his tribe's religious beliefs are rapidly being replaced by Christianity. Okonkwo is opposed to these new practices and struggles to put a stop to the destruction of his beloved Igbo culture. Attempting to rally his tribesmen, he finds little support as the tribe is divided and only few people continue to defend the Igbo culture. Some, including Nwoye, his son, had already freely embraced Christianity, while others simply had not given in to these new ways of the white man. In a moment of anger and frustration, Okonkwo kills a messenger from the British district office in a final attempt to defend his Igbo culture and impress upon the people the need to fight back against European colonialism. This wins him no support whatsoever. Okonkwo, unable to defend his culture alone and unable to accept the change, hangs himself. The use of traditional Igbo proverbs are frequent throughout the book. We went to upstate New York at his home on his invitation to chat with him.
The story wanted to be told at all costs, and why it chose me to tell the story, I don't know.
That man was one of the strongest men in Umuofu. You drove him to kill himself. Now he will be buried like a dog and men will not... Shut up! Let me translate.
What colonization did to us was to remove power from the elders.
What kind of useless custom is that?
And pass it over to children. This is what European education meant for maybe, I don't know what other place had this experience of having children because they went to school, giving them power over the elders to determine what was going to be what. Students from a girls' school in Korea, the whole class of 30 plus wrote a letter each to me, and the teacher sent it on. And I learned that my story was also the story of Korea, at least as these children saw it. Some of them were very angry that I killed Okonkwo. And they thought Okonkwo should have been spared to succeed. They didn't want him to fail. So that's one sort of way out. I'd never been to Korea. I didn't know their history. It was these children who told me, oh, when we were colonized by the Japanese. And so that similar but different incidents of colonization was the thing that held us together. And I've discovered that the whole life of the world is full of that kind of similarities and that people can use if they want to make themselves brothers and sisters of other people. In spite of the great success of the novel which you referred to, you would think that the relation between the writer of that story and those who published it would be very close. Unfortunately, we live in a world of accountants. So I expect that in the end there will be many translations. But the one I promise to do will be my own version, which I expect would justify itself when it comes out, because I had sort of taken the story from its roots and created a language, a dialect of English, which was my own invention. This I can now see, because I kept worrying about what word would suit what. I kept worrying about how you translate a proverb so that its dignity would be maintained. I had worried about all those things, and now I know why. It's because I wanted English and Igbo to hold a conversation and see how you can tell a story that happened in Igbo in this dialect of English. Now I want to go back and do it the other way. Oh, I may have, but once I encountered Yeats' poem, things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Once I encountered that, I knew that was I had to take that title, Things Fall Apart. It presented itself.
We'll be right back with more of Chinua Achebe after this break, so stay with us.
I didn't need an editor. In fact, this is the point at which I remembered my professor of English at Ibadan, who said that my short story, was fine. It was, in fact, there's a competition that they arranged in the English department. My story was, no story won the prize. That's where we began, right? Then my story was mentioned in dispatches, if you like. That was good, but not good enough to win a prize. It lacked form. So I said, I was overjoyed because Ibadan, you knew Ibadan was no joke, you know, the English department. So to be mentioned at all was a great, you know, celebration. So I said, great. I wonder whether you can tell me something about form for the future, so that, you know. So she said yes, of course, except she was going to play tennis that day. So we went on over the whole term, waiting for her to be ready to meet with me. And then at the end of the term, one day she then called me or saw me and said, you know, I looked at that your story again, and actually there's nothing wrong with it, you see. So I didn't learn anything about form from my teachers. And in a way, that was as it should be, because there was nobody who could have told me how to write things all apart. It was so peculiar to me. Perhaps the most moderate, because moderation is important here. Okonkwo is a man of excess. I respect him as a hero, but a flawed hero. But very interesting, nevertheless. You know, that's why he's famous. Now, his friend, what is his friend's name? Obiorika is a more moderate, the kind of person who would keep the house in order. And so if I had to be one person, if it's not a Zimma, it probably would be Obiorika. Until we understand that we are one person, that when you talk about the diaspora, that wherever you find this diaspora, whether it is in America, in Brazil, in Africa itself, wherever, it is the same story that they have. And it is the story of the transatlantic slave trade. Now, unless we recognize that, and so wherever you see an African diaspora person, you know, this is a victim, like myself, you see, of that event. And until we realize how thorough and complete it was planned to be. You see, Baldwin said it was never intended that he and I should ever meet, not to talk about discussing anything. So we have a long way to go in the diaspora and getting our story straight. Because if this story is not straight, we would not be straight. Oh, Nigeria is home. That's what first of all, that's what it means to me, is home. It's a very frustrating home, a very annoying home, but it is my home. And if I had my way, that's where this interview would be happening. But since it's not gone that way, no, I don't believe in weeping over something. I think it's more effective, more useful to find what you can do rather than what you can't do. So Nigeria has such a wonderful possibility built into it, but something it never uses. Talent. It would rather use a half-baked person rather than somebody who is highly qualified. But that's the country I've got. Oh, it is very, very important. It's central to our thinking. And I think it is conveyed. They conveyed it. The Igbo convey it in many different ways, but the one that springs to mind immediately is their statement that wherever one thing stands, another thing will stand beside it. That one thing and another thing, you see. Nothing stands alone. If you see something that stands alone, the Igbo people say run away, because that's the worst possible danger that doesn't have anything near it, not even a necklace to keep it company. You know, by itself. That's the Igbo idea of evil alone, you see. So it's from there that the idea of balance comes, that one thing is good, but something else is also good. Become familiar, with your home, but know also about your neighbors. The young man who never went anywhere thinks his mother is the greatest cook. That's one thing they tell us. So balance is at the center of our idea of the good life, the good world. Well, Urunaka, if you like, you can place him with the women in the society. This is how Okonkwo saw him. But he's a very decent and a very nice person. Not successful in the sense of wealth and resources or ability to look after his family and make them live big. All these things didn't work for him. The one thing that worked for him was his flute. So in the view of Igbo people, he was a failure. And this is, in fact, where Okonkwo makes the biggest mistake. And the Igbo culture is partly responsible because Igbo culture makes a lot of strength and power and success. And Okonkwo heard this from his society. he heard it all the time about, you know, this importance of strength, of being manly, and so on. Now, Igbo society does not talk so loudly about the other side, but it talks gently. It's there. You've got to make an effort to listen, to hear it. If you are wearing all these heavy things people wear in their ears, nowadays you probably wouldn't hear. That in a gentle voice, this society is saying, but also remember your children, but also remember the women, but also remember compassion. Why does it say, well, if the gods have decided that this boy should die, we can't stop them, but I wouldn't be there. You see, so cowardice is even a value. And the Igbo society is saying that to Okonkwo. It is not only in the machete and so on that there is virtue. There is virtue in sitting down quietly and contemplating.
Coming up in the second part of this special series on Chinua Achebe, we talked about his views on the position of women in his works, and also his decision not to accept the Merit Award bestowed on him by his home country Nigeria, and so much more. Don't miss it. It was the year 1958 when this young and aspiring writer set out to publish his first manuscript, a book that would focus on the Western influence on religion, traditional African beliefs, and the society in general. Little did Chinua Achebe know that 50 years on, his name would be a household name. His book would have been translated in over 30 different languages, and he would still be relevant in today's world and society. Welcome, we say, Nyase. Welcome to Messengers, a show that introduces you to African arts and artists all over the world. I am your host, Oyiza. This show is the second of our two-part series that celebrates 50 years of the man and his works. Stay with us. Critics have accused Chinua Achebe in his book Things Fall Apart of downplaying the role of the African woman in today's society. But Achebe is quick to answer that it's quite the contrary, as displayed in Nwoye's mother, Okonkwo's wife, and also his love for his daughter, Ezema. The role of the African woman, our mothers, our wives, is still as relevant as it was back then.
Many people think that what I'm doing is praising the position of women. It's not, it's very opposite. What I was doing was pointing out how unjust the Igbo society is to women, and how better to exploit than to make the hero of the story, Okonkwo, all his problems are problems to do with the feminine. There's nothing else wrong with Okonkwo except his failure to understand that the gentleness, the compassion which we associate with women is even more important than strength. Now, people don't understand why I am showing these women who are not in charge. I'm showing them that way because that's how it is in the society I want to change. And that's what Okonkwo was not able to learn. And I want others after him to learn it, that women, compassion, music, these things are as valuable, more valuable than war and violence. They're great, they're good. There was a time when it seemed as if the thing was drying up, but anybody who knows what art and is would have known that it was waiting for something to happen. I don't know what it is, but it, you know, we seem to be back at work. Why? The reason I didn't receive national honors was that I didn't want to receive national honors from Nigeria as it was, and perhaps maybe still is today. I was tired of hoping that someone would come up who would understand the value of the position that we earn because of our education or leadership or whatever, and to apply it to make our people happier and more prosperous. Oh, just a nice guy. He has. What I feel towards him is a sense of wonder and pity. And pity is probably not a good word, because Okonkwo is a very dignified and proud person and would not like anyone to pity him. But I'm sort of concerned that a major aspect of our human experience has to be suffering and failing to reach where you set out to go because of all kinds of things on the way. And so one day somebody came to me in the hospital after I had this accident. And what he said, the question he asked me was, why you? Why would this happen to you? So I said, I didn't think twice. I said to him, do you have an idea of somebody else to whom it should have happened? And what I was saying is that our world is tragic by nature. And that's why tragic stories appeal to me. And far more than happy and comic stories.
What kind of story does an Anglophone Cameroonian write? Especially when to the left he has French Cameroon, to the right he has neighboring Nigeria that's also so huge. So we are stuck there in the middle.
Oh, that's something they have to find out themselves. And you see, that uncomfortable, well, forget the word you use for that little enclave or something, that has a story. That feeling of being the little, almost forgotten member, tucked away there, there's a huge story there. You see, the mistake many people make is to think that a successful story is successful because it is big, or because it is somebody else's story that has worked. So I don't have something. You hear some people say, we were not, I was not taught my culture. So what do I do? Well, the fact that you were not taught your culture is a big story. You see, we mustn't wait for a story that looks like somebody else's story before we can recognize our possibility. You see, the Cameroonians, I went to school with them, because at that time, every term, a certain number of Cameroonians would come to Mwahia. It was part of, so I knew a number of Cameroonians, Noto.
Oh yes, Lawyer Noto.
Nkweta.
Okay, Nkweta became an ambassador.
That's right.
Okay.
All these people, for a whole generation, going back to Ndele.
Yes, Ndele, yeah.
Yeah, he was a doctor and was a leader of government business in Cameroon. He, in fact, led your exit from Nigeria. And we in Nigeria could be saying to you, serves you right. Because, yeah.
Cameroonians, are you hearing that?
Yeah, next time, you see, be careful about big neighbors and big friends. Actually, seriously, what happened was not quite fair. Because what happened when British Cameroon joined French Cameroon, was that the power moved to the north, and somehow you had a very crafty ruler in the north. The Sardauna of Sokoto was then the premier of northern Nigeria. He managed to take the
northern part.
Yes, into Nigeria, while the south went to Cameroon. But that's where you are now, and your business is, in my view, to find the story about your condition. When I came back, this is during the Biafran War, I had just traveled from Enugu to my home to announce to my family that I heard on the radio that Okibo had been killed. My son of 2 years or 3 said, "Daddy, don't let him die." So, and the reason was that Okibo had made friends with him. Okibo had friends everywhere, children, old people. And I remember whenever he came to visit us, this boy, the little boy, will hold his hand and try to break it, and Okibo will be pretending to be crying, you see, and they will be struggling this way, and Okibo will say over, he said, "Children are so wicked." And so that's the boy who said, "Don't let him die," you see. And the reason I say this is that I then decided to publish something called "Don't Let Him Die," an anthology of poetry by friends of Okibo, on anyone who wanted to contribute something. There was no plan which will work unless the subject, in this case Okibo, had something of interest to say. His life was so romantic in a way. His life and death was so extraordinary. He just seemed so unlike anybody else you knew. So that's material for the kind of history that we have of him, but also the profound nature of his poetry. So it is both his life and his works. I began by telling you the story of, no, I didn't begin, but I told you the fellow who said, "Why should it happen to you?" And my answer is, why not? And that's really what I believe. And they said, look at my fiction. I mean, Okonkwo is, strong-headed and wouldn't listen to advice and etc. And what happens? He comes to a sticky end. Then I said, okay, let me try a different kind of African, an intellectual kind of person. So I go to Ezolo, Arrow of God, say a priest, a philosopher. And what happens to him? He comes to a sticky end. So there's no way out. What came to us, in Igbo they say that what came to Nte. Nte is a small insect. What came to it was bigger than Nte. What was caught in his trap went and set a trap, and something bigger than himself was caught in that trap. So what does Nte do? So there is no way, there's no short answer to the problem posed to us from the moment the initiative was taken from us and we lost our freedom and independence. Well, I think it was the day I finished, but you see, the thing with writing, with my kind of writing, is that you never really finish. When I thought I had finished, Bisi Onabanjo, with whom I was sharing accommodation in London, we both went to the BBC, and he's a friend of mine. He knew I had this manuscript, and he said to me, "Why don't you show it to this man?" The man was a producer, BBC producer, who was a novelist. Gilbert Phelps. So I was very shy, you know. So this is it, you know, go show him. So after a while, I took this thing and told him I was writing. And he looked as writers would if you bring them a manuscript. Say, oh, no, it wasn't hostile, but he wasn't exactly embracing me. But he accepted it very politely. And then BC and I, we went some British Council tour of 3 or 4 days. And one day I came back from our outing, and there was a message for me. It said Gilbert Phelps had called and left his number. So I said, well, if he doesn't like the book, would he make a phone call? Wouldn't he wait for me to return? So maybe he likes it. So I would call him. That was the first response I had. And eventually, to cut a long story short, he liked this book. He recommended his publishers to see it. Meanwhile, his publishers saw it and they were ready to start. I said, no, the book is not ready. I had made a mistake in thinking that I could have 3 generations in one book. And yet it's not a big book. So it is too thin to carry this weight. That version of Things Fall Apart had Okonkwo's children's generation and a 3rd generation.
Wow.
So bringing it to today. And now I realized just suddenly that there are 3 books here. The first part is Okonkwo. So that's what I'm going to do. And after that, I'll see what happens about the others. And so I rewrote the book with this emphasis on Okonkwo's generation, not his son. Eventually, I wrote No Longer This, which was, as you know, the story of his Okonkwo's son. But what about my father's generation? That one is still waiting to be done. So you see, there's no quick answer to your question. This is Chinua Achebe. You are watching Messengers.
We shared lunch and then we shared jokes. Achebe took us back in time to a place I personally never witnessed. But all I can say is I might as well have been there. The hours spent with this African great will forever be etched in my memory. And I hope that you were able to take something out of it too. Sadly, that is the end of our show today. And until next time, we will bring you another great African artist making waves across the Atlantic. I'm your host, Oyiza